Good evening. I'm Jane from California, technically, but my background is in foreign policy, and that's where I got my political science background and master's degree. However, I am a native Minnesotan and I moved back. I'm presenting this podcast tonight threefold. First, I want to explain what traditional foreign policy analysis is. Second of all, I want to explain the disruption and invasion of my political podcasts with small minded Trump people who continue to combine religion and politics into the same vein with tainted and obscured results. And third of all, I'm looking for a new host based on their insufficiencies. Now, I'm just going to give a few examples of what's going on in the world and how it can be interpreted historically. Right now, there's several hot spots in the world, including the long-term Russian-Ukrainian conflict, which started in 2014 and has killed over 14,000 people. Traditionally, the Ukraine was ethnically and culturally identified with Russia. At one time in the 1800s, Kyiv, which used to be known as Kiev, was the nation's capital. They have expressed their interest since at least 2008 to join the European Union and emancipate from the Russian Eastern extreme strain that they have and the type of bullying that Russia does to their outlying countries that are on the border, that they try to hurl back in, and they try to amass their resources and subjugate their people only for the purpose of maintaining Russia, continuing to kill their own people, and causing demise. Then we have the problem right now in Yemen, which we've discussed on our show right now, in which the rebel Houthis have been involved in a civil war for over 10 years that involves Saudi Arabia. And the Saudi Arabia money going through that Gulf Strait is being affected because some of the Houthi rebels are attacking westernized ships, but really the battle is between Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and Yemen, and that's where it should be contained. Now, the U.S. does have an interest there, and we do have naval ships and other things going in there, and a few of our commercial ships with who ran those ships have been killed. And yes, it's a huge strain, but it doesn't or should not involve a civil war. So I'm going to give a historical example of Yemen. The Suez Canal, the crisis of 1956, and how it was handled professionally through Eden of Britain, Eisenhower from the United States, and the French leader. Nasser in 1956 decided to nationalize the Suez Canal because England and France had cut them off with extra subsidies of running the canal. In other words, they weren't providing them with the financial security it needed to run the canal safely. The perks were not being sent back to Egypt, which is right next to the canal, and Egypt did not want to be exploited by long-term colonists. So General Nasser was upset that his flow of revenue was disrupted. He was a non-aligned country in 1956, which was about 11 years after World War II, and he was friends with Russia and Western powers. Now, this made the Western powers tense because they thought he should take a stronger stance against Russia. Then what happened was the British and French parachuted down into the canal, and Israel sent some of their soldiers into the Sinai Peninsula to present a strong presence that Egypt itself was not going to run the Suez Canal by itself. So what happened was Israeli won a lot of battles, but they still didn't have access to the canal. They only had access to a small strait. After British and French presented their military strength right around the canal and bullied Egypt into making an agreement, then Egypt had to concede. President Eisenhower was mad because Britain and France went in there without any consultation of the United States. And the United States was becoming a more stronger global power at that time. So in other words, the US was taking stronger leadership as it had already done after World War II. And what happened was that Dwight D. Eisenhower found himself in a situation where his own allies did not initially listen to him. So what he did is he told the European NATO allies that, you have to take into consideration this be a mutual plan from all NATO allies. We have to collectively bargain and do diplomatic skills in order to negotiate this problem with the Suez Canal. We do not need to use military strength because then it might piss off Russia and cause them to do something like give extra money to Egypt, and then Egypt could blockade the Western powers from using the canal. Well, Eisenhower did effectively negotiate the agreement, and the Suez Crisis of 1956 was solved. How does this relate to modern life? Right now, for example, in Yemen, the Saudis are not forgiving towards Yemen. The Houthi rebels have gone into Saudi Arabia several times and hitting oil refineries and commercial sites like a Grand Prix racetrack. And they've disrupted Saudi society and also invoked fear among the residents. So it was a problem between two Middle Eastern powers, but since several countries use that strait in Yemen, and I'll bring up a map. I'll do that right now, just a minute. So there's several countries using that power, just like during COVID. There was a problem in another canal in which I'm going to bring this picture up right now. During COVID, there was another shipping delay where Chinese boats were trying to go not through the Red Sea, but I think it was the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. So what happened was a lot of the commercial private goods between China and the rest of the world and other Western trade in the Red Sea was being blocked. And I believe the Houthi rebels might have been involved even then with that kind of problem. So as you can see, I'm going to point on my map. The Red Sea, it starts at the top as the Suez Canal. You can't see it. But then it goes down through Saudi Arabia. It hits the Eastern African countries of Eritrea, Somalia, and Ethiopia, and it narrows down very small around the bend of Yemen and goes into the Gulf of Arabia, the Gulf of Aden. So this is all these crucial shipping lanes here, and also in the other side of the Persian Gulf. On the other side of Yemen and Saudi Arabia is the Persian Gulf between Iraq and Iran that they sometimes fought over, including the Al-Shabat waterway between Iraq and Iran. That was a problem in the past. There was always a dispute over waterways between Iran and Iraq. These areas are crucial for international trade. It's partly how the Chinese get their stuff through the Mediterranean. Otherwise, they have to go all the way around the Cape of Good Horn in South Africa. And this is how we discuss foreign policy on my show. So I'm just providing the 1956 Suez Canal as an example. And what I've run into is with people like my former co-host of 15 years, John Yoder, and I'll say his name because he's public about it. He'll say things of this nature. Just recently this week, over 800 children or so were killed in the Gaza Strip after Israel broke the ceasefire. Now, to a Christian human being, the murder of children, no matter what political cause, is murder. You're killing people. It's against the Bible. It's in the Old Testament. Thou shalt not kill. Israel does not have a right to disproportionately kill Gaza residents who have no power. They can cherry pick and kill the Hamas as they chose to have done in the past. In the 1972 Munich Olympics, when the Jews were killed, 11 of them at the Olympics in Munich, Golda Meir went after every single terrorist in multiple countries. It was in Norway, Turkey, and other places across Europe. She went and killed every single one of those people that killed their 11 athletes. Now, even that is a hostile nature, and I'll explain why. As a spiritual entity, whether you're Jewish, Muslim, or Christian, you, especially in Christianity, you must turn the other cheek to someone who persecutes you. No, you will not get your reward on earth. You will get your reward in heaven. But fighting over land grabs and historical geographic territory is important, but we have to share. And 90% of the Palestinian people are not driven by Hamas hatred. They're driven by just their everyday life and their desire to survive. And maybe people do want to blame Joe Biden for not fully negotiating that problem, but Donald Trump takes a negative approach to everything, whether it's Europe, the Middle East, or the US. The problem I have with Donald Trump is he has no educational and historical background in handling foreign policy. He's making enemies out of our allies, Canada, Mexico, most European countries, Greenland. He's saying that we're providing them all the military security, but he's harming us economically by denying, now trying to put tariffs on Germany and Belgium and other places when they produce the most highly polished, effective goods in the world. They have the most successful, including Poland. Germany and Poland are the most technically advanced countries in the world. It's not the United States. Another country that's technically advanced is Japan, but most of the technological knowledge has come out of Central Europe in the last 15 years. And Poland is at the top of their game. So if Donald Trump is going to pay retribution to people who are already our allies and have a lot of assets, harm is going to come back on the United States. Even China, we don't have to be their friend, but we have to create trade agreements that are negotiable that will benefit both the Chinese and the Americans. He's always putting his personal offensiveness into every policy plan situation. And there's no reason why he should have upped the tariffs in Canada when the tariffs are already pretty expensive between us and Canada. There's certain goods they charge us too much for, and there's certain tariffs that we charge them too much for, and they're just going to stop doing business with us. Then people who have certain car parts in the United States, probably what's going to happen is Canada's going to sell those parts to Germany and France, and then Americans will have to acquire those parts from Europe, in which Trump is trying to harm right now. So I find myself in a dilemma as a political scientist, finding hosts that have proper foreknowledge of discussing foreign policy, especially, but also domestic. Because the Trump sheep, even this particular co host of mine who is a Trump sheep, he believes that Elon Musk and Doge is doing a great job. No, they are not. They are singly slaughtering and not prudently handpicking certain jobs out of each department that are no longer useful. No, they're doing a mass slaughter, which is not reasonable and not effective. Maybe they're saving money in salaries, but they're also causing people to be unemployed, forcing people to relocate who work in areas where the federal government is only present remotely, causing American veterans to suffer more than they already have. So I am looking for a new co host. I am looking for someone who has intellectual skills that can discern traditional foreign policy, the kind that John Mearsheimer, Kenneth Oy, and other traditional foreign policy people have presented through irtheory.com. I'm looking for that kind of host. And I appreciate you listening tonight, because if you listen to the last few podcasts on the YouTube channel, it's been very disturbing. It's basically being, I have two men of color on the show, and they basically are one-upmanshiping themselves, saying that African people are elite and they're successful, but Black Americans or African Americans should be trashed. And I'm not going to tolerate that kind of dialogue on my show. And then we have another racist co-host who's half Mexican and white and is constantly berating his own Latino race and categorizing them into common categories. For example, he thinks they're all blue-collar worker. No, they're not. I know Latino people who are U.S. House of Representatives. They're lawyers. They work at UCLA. They run universities. I live there. I know them. I lived in California. But no, I have these three biased co-hosts who are doing me harm. And I need another co-host with a political science history background. Now, some of this information tonight, I just winged it, but I did read about the Suez Canal crisis of 1956 in the Henry Kissinger book, Diplomacy. And that book, even though Kissinger can be a schmuck, has a lot of dynamic analysis on how countries dealt with each other during certain situations. Thank you for listening. It's time for me to go to work.